everyone, welcome to today's session on metaphors and similes. My name is Katrina and I'm going to be taking you through the session today. What I would like you to take from this session really is just an understanding of the differences between metaphors and similes, how to use them in your own writing, and then how to identify them in other texts. And this will come in handy, especially when moving on in school and having to analyse large chunks of text for any figurative language techniques. Before we start, I would like you to make sure that you have a pen and paper in front of you because I will be asking you to do some activities as we go along. So I'm just going to share my screen with you and we can get started. Okay, so as I have said, today's session is going to be on metaphors and similes, and it's really just going to be, what I'd like you to just get out of this is to be able to understand the differences, as I've said, and how metaphors and similes can create mood and an atmosphere within creative writing. So just to start us off, what I would like you to do is on your pieces of paper, just number down the side 1 to 7, have a look at these sentences and see if you can identify the similes and the metaphors. So the sentences we have are as red as a rose. He has a heart of gold. Life is like a box of chocolates. Larry is like his twin, Louis. She has a sea of knowledge locked away inside her head. Her hair was a flowing golden river streaming down her shoulders. Like a golden river, her hair fell over her shoulders. So just pause the video here and give yourself about 5 minutes just to work through those and just label them really as metaphors or similes. Okay, welcome back. I hope that was a useful starting into activity for you. So if we go through these then. So as red as a rose is a simile. He has a heart of gold is an example of a metaphor. Now the differences here is that when we liken something and saying that something is as red as a rose, we are comparing it. Whereas if we say something along the lines of he has a heart of gold, we're saying that that's what he literally has. And as I'll go on to explain, this is the difference between a simile and a metaphor. So number 3 then, life is like a box of chocolates is a simile. Larry is like his twin Louis is also a simile because again, you're comparing. She has a sea of knowledge locked away inside her head. This is an example of a metaphor. Her hair was a flowing golden river streaming down her shoulders is another example of a metaphor. And the last one, like a golden river, her hair fell over her shoulders is a simile. Now those last two, they are focusing on the same subject. And I included those just so you could see how you could use a metaphor and a simile to describe really the same thing. So again, with the metaphor, we are saying there that her hair is literally a golden river, but we know that that doesn't exist. Nothing like that exists. And then therefore we can't attribute that to a person to say that a person has their hair is like that because you can't sprout water from your head that is golden colour. Whereas with number 7, it being a simile, we are just comparing it and we're saying, okay, well, like a golden river, her hair fell over her shoulders. It's also, that one can also, there is a little hidden metaphor in there with a golden river because, I mean, there aren't any rivers of gold, as far as I know, in existence. However, again, we are comparing this subject's hair to that. And that just creates the image in your mind of a golden river. That's then what her hair looks like. Golden here, we are thinking that it will be along the lines of, that she'd be blonde, potentially. So, before I go on to explain metaphors and similes a little bit further, what I'd like you to do is to have a look at these 2 definitions that are on your screen now and see if you can just think about which definition matches up with which technique. They might not be under the correct bit of terminology. So maybe just give yourself a couple of minutes or just a few seconds just to read through them and to think, okay, well, which one of these could be a metaphor? Which one of these could be the definition for a simile? So I'll just give you a couple of moments. Okay, so a metaphor then is a word or phrase applied to an object or action to which it literally cannot be. So as I said previously, there isn't literally anything in the world that is a golden river. There's no golden rivers, as far as I'm aware, in the world. There aren't literal rivers of flowing gold. But we can use that to compare something to something else because it creates that image in your mind. But to say that a river is flowing gold, that is literally what it is doing, that's then a metaphor, because you're saying that it is that is what that is, and that there's nothing, you can't dispute that. But then we know that those things don't exist. Whereas with a simile, similes are then that comparison. So you aren't saying that it is literally that thing, you're saying that it is like that thing, or it is as red as a rose. It's not a rose, but it's saying that the color of the rose is, that's what it is similar to, whatever that subject is that you're talking about. That's what it's similar to. A nice way to try and remember this difference actually is that if you just remember that a simile sounds like similar, and then therefore you'd be comparing. If you're saying that something is similar to something else, that's a comparison. And that's really all that similes are, is that they're comparisons. And if you can remember that, then you can then remember that, okay, even though a metaphor is similar to that, it's still a way to describe something. But a metaphor is saying that it is literally something, that is literally that thing. That's quite a nice way perhaps to understand it and try and remember it. Okay, so as I've said, metaphors then are words or phrases applied to an object or an action to which it literally cannot be. So simply, a metaphor is a way of describing something by saying that it is that something else, that it is literally something, that it is literally that. So as I've put there, life is a roller coaster. That is it. That is undisputable, because you're not giving that point of comparison. You're not saying life is like a roller coaster. You're saying life is a roller coaster. That's it. That's a definite. But we know that that's not actually true, but it gives the reader a clear idea of what something is like. So these examples that I've put here is, you are my sunshine, they were peas in a pod, life is a roller coaster. So if you'd like to, this is optional, if you'd like to just take a couple of moments just to perhaps consider what each of those sentences might be implying, then please feel free to do so. So similes then. Again, as I've said, similes are the comparison of one thing to another thing of a different kind. So they describe something by comparing the subject to something else, usually using like or as. So if you ever see a sentence, if you're reading something, you ever see a sentence describing something and it's using like or as. So you're saying, if you say that her skin was as white as snow, there you go, that's a simile. You're not saying her skin is snow. You're not saying that that is a definite, that is, it's undisputable. You're saying that it's like that thing. It's a useful way to describe something without using a long list of adjectives. And again, just helps to create that vivid image in the reader's mind, because you can compare something to something that is known universally, that everybody knows what it looks like. So for example, the last sentence in those list examples that I put on the slide, he was tall like a tree. You could write a whole paragraph describing the length of this person's limbs, length of his arms, his legs, his torso. But as I said, you would only get really just a long list of adjectives, whereas just saying that he's tall like a tree, comparing him to the tallness of that tree, that is then really, it's quite a nice, neat way to just sum it all up into one nice, neat little sentence or a couple of little words. So again, if you would like to just have a look at those examples and just try and work out what each of them are implying, then again, just give yourself a couple of moments to do so. Okay, so I am going to give you a little task to do. What I'd like you to do is to make a table in your books with two headings. So on one heading, head one of the columns metaphors and the other one similes. On the left-hand side of the screen, you will see just a list of some sentences. They are metaphors. What I'd like you to do is to take those metaphors and to change them into similes, and obviously put them underneath the simile column. On the right-hand side of your screen, there's another list of sentences, and they are similes. And what I would like you to do is to put these under the metaphor side of your table, and to change these similes into metaphors. Once you've done that, what I'd like you to do is to think about, or if you would like something else to do, just have a think about if you can add any of your own to the list. So can you think of any metaphors to add to the metaphor side of your table? Can you think of any similes to add onto your similes side of the table? But what I suggest you do is to set yourself a timer for about 5-10 minutes, pause this video, and then come back once you are finished, and we will move on. Okay, so if I just talk you through these then, and I will show you how you can change a metaphor into a simile and vice versa. So on this first column then, my wife is like a mouse. There we go, we've done that really. Because if you think back, my wife is a mouse, that's the metaphor. But really, all it is just a case of adding in that comparative word, so like. And there we go, we've created a simile. The second one then, the moon is like a balloon. So again, we've taken it from saying that it is a balloon to saying that it's like a balloon. That it's not literally a balloon, but it's like it resembles it. Nurses are like the backbone of hospitals. Again, we're not saying there that nurses are literally a backbone, because they're not. They're people, they're not skeletons. But because of the fact that they essentially run the hospitals, they keep it ticking over, they keep it going. That's how you could say that they are the backbone of these hospitals, and they're like the backbone of hospitals because they keep it going, they keep it up, they keep it stable. The bar of soap was as slippery as an eel. Now this is an example where you have to add in two words. Some of them you will have to use two words. So the bar of soap was as slippery as an eel. There we're not saying that the bar of soap is an eel, because personally I wouldn't want to use a bar of soap that was an eel. That would be a little bit disgusting. But we're saying that the bar of soap was as slippery as an eel. So that's again, it just kind of gives you that image of this bar of soap slipping through your hands because it's that slippery. And again, it's a universal thing that everybody can understand, everybody knows. Again, then the similes to a metaphor is a similar kind of concept in that you take out you take out that comparison word. So hope is like a guide. No. We're saying that hope is a guide through miserable nights. Life is not like a box of chocolates, life is a box of chocolates. So again, just taking out that like. I'm like a bird, no. I am a bird, I always fly away. His moustache was like a pencil, no, his moustache is a pencil. So there again, you can see how simple it is really. It's just to change from one to the other. It's really just a case of either adding or omitting a word. So now it's your turn. What I'm going to do is to give you two activities that I'd like you to complete, just outside of this session and obviously at your own leisure. First one that I'd like you to do is to choose a famous person or somebody that you know personally, and to think of two similes and two metaphors to describe them. You can either list them or you can do as I have done and put them into one sentence. Again, remember that similes use as and like to compare. You are not saying that if you're using a simile, you're not saying that it is that thing. That is then a metaphor. Similes compare. Simile, similar, comparison. Whereas then, as I've said, metaphors, you describe something as literally being that thing. So my example here, Christopher Lee is the king of Hollywood. He's not, because there isn't a king of Hollywood. So therefore, that's a metaphor. The recognizable roar of his voice dominates the screen. Christopher Lee, when he's on screen, he doesn't literally roar at people. He's not got the capacity to roar at people. He's not a lion. He isn't a cat. He can't do that. So again, it's another metaphor, but it just emphasizes how dominant, I suppose, he was on screen. His death then was like the passing of a member of the royal family. Christopher Lee is not part of the royal family, but the fact that his death was so sad, it made everybody think about and kind of compare him to a member of the royal family. It's almost like somebody quite prominent has died, which he was. And we can use the royal family as that kind of area of comparison because they're quite a dominant and quite a prominent figures, I suppose, in all of our lives. However, his legacy will persist like a red stain on a white carpet. Again, there's another simile. We're not saying that he is literally that red stain on that white carpet. Think of it in the sense that if you spill Ribena, for example, on a white carpet, you can keep scrubbing and you can keep scrubbing, but it will never come out. It will always be some kind of tinge to that white carpet. And that was really my intention there, was to say that, there'll be new people and people will start afresh, everybody will start afresh, but there will, because of how, I suppose, how dominant he was on the screen and how popular he was, and just such an influential figure he was, there will always be some kind of stain there, I suppose. There will always be something to do with his legacy just kind of hanging around in Hollywood. So that would be your first task. If you would like to do these in 2 parts, then pause the video here and then come back in a little while to just listen to the rest of your task that I'm setting you. But if you would like to hear both, then obviously continue watching. So then the second task that I would like you to do is, once you've done that and once you've practiced just kind of using these similes and writing your own similes and metaphors, what I'd like you to do is have a look at this picture and to write a descriptive paragraph using these techniques that really is just describing this picture. Again, I've just put a reminder there that similes use like and as, because remember, similes, similar, comparison, and that metaphors describe something as literally being something else. If you'd like to challenge yourself a little bit more, think about, can you use a range of interesting and descriptive vocabulary? And can you use any other figurative language techniques? Just try and stretch yourself a little bit and just have fun with it. Just get creative. This is your personal work. Nobody else can see it. It's just a way for you to practice, or really just to put what you've learned today into practice. So yeah, that is it. I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope it's just helped you to understand the differences between metaphors and similes. Once you start using these in your own writing regularly, it will be so much easier to be able to identify them in other texts. So a lot of these skills are transferable into, I suppose, as I said, other texts and other areas of your school life, of your education, of your curriculum. So as I said, again, I hope that has been helpful for all of you, and I hope to see you back here next time. Thank you, guys.